The sound of Maya's body hitting the wet marble steps echoed louder than the thunder. Derek Holloway stood in the doorway of his mansion, rain soaking his designer suit, pointing at his wife, bleeding on the ground. "Crawl back to whatever ghetto I found you in." He slammed the door, locked it, walked back to his champagne and his guests laughing inside. He didn't see the headlights approaching through the storm. He didn't see the convoy of black SUVs stopping at his gate, and he certainly didn't know that in exactly 4 minutes, a man worth $12 billion would kick down that same door and say 5 words that would destroy everything Derek had ever built. "That woman is my daughter." Comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Derek Holloway's hand connected with Maya's face before anyone could react. The slap echoed through the grand ballroom like a gunshot. Crystal champagne flutes froze halfway to lips. Forks clattered against china. 47 of Connecticut's most powerful investors watched in stunned silence as Derek grabbed his wife by her hair and yanked her up from the dinner table. "I told you not to speak," Derek hissed through clenched teeth. "I told you to sit there and look pretty. Is that too complicated for your damaged brain?" Maya's hands flew to her scalp, tears streaming down her dark skin. "Derek, please." "Please what?" He twisted hard. "Please embarrass me more? Please ruin the biggest deal of my career?" Thomas Whitmore, chairman of Atlantic Capital Partners, set down his wine glass. "Derek, perhaps we should—" "Stay out of this, Thomas." Derek's voice was ice. "This is between me and my wife." He released Maya's hair with a shove. She stumbled backward, catching herself on the edge of the mahogany table. Her elbow knocked a wine glass. Red Bordeaux splashed across the white tablecloth like blood. Derek laughed.
It wasn't a humorous sound. "Look at that. Look at what you did."
He turned to his guests, spreading his arms wide. "This is what I deal with every day, ladies and gentlemen. A clumsy, stupid, useless woman who can't even sit through a dinner without destroying something."
"I'm sorry," Maya whispered. "I'm so sorry. I'll clean it."
"You'll clean it?" Derek grabbed a cloth napkin and threw it in her face. "You can't clean anything. You can't cook. You can't dress yourself properly. You can't hold a simple conversation. Tell me, Maya, what exactly can you do?" The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some looked at their plates. Others exchanged glances. But no one spoke. No one intervened. That was the power Derek Holloway held over this room. Vanessa Cole, seated at Derek's right hand in a dress that cost more than Maya's entire wardrobe, leaned forward with a sympathetic pout.
"Poor thing. She really does try, doesn't she? It's almost sad."
"Sad is generous," Derek muttered.
Maya stood frozen, the napkin at her feet, humiliation burning through every cell of her body. 5 years. 5 years of this. 5 years of being told she was worthless, stupid, lucky that Derek had saved her from whatever gutter he'd found her in. She couldn't remember a time before Derek. That was the worst part. Her memory began 5 years ago, in a hospital bed, with this man holding her hand, telling her that her parents were dead, that she had no one, that he would take care of her. She had believed him. God, she had believed every word. "Derek." Thomas Whitmore stood up, buttoning his jacket. "I think we should discuss the investment terms tomorrow, when things are calmer." "Sit down, Thomas." "I really think I said sit down." Derek's eyes never left Maya. "The deal closes tonight. $80 million. Atlantic Capital invests in Holloway Pharmaceuticals, and everyone in this room gets very, very rich. One pathetic woman isn't going to ruin that." He grabbed Maya's arm. His fingers dug into her flesh hard enough to leave bruises.
"Derek, you're hurting me."
"Good." He dragged her toward the service entrance. The kitchen staff scattered as he pushed through, their eyes wide, their mouths shut. They had seen this before. They knew better than to interfere.
I want you out, Derek said, his voice low and venomous. I want you gone from my house tonight.
What? Derek, no!
Did I stutter? He threw open the back door. Rain hammered down from a black sky. Lightning split the clouds. The wind howled like something dying. Maya looked at the storm, then back at her husband. It's a hurricane warning. You can't. I can do whatever I want. This is my house, my money, my life. You're just a parasite I've been feeding for 5 years.
Please.
Maya grabbed his sleeve.
Please, Derek, I have nowhere to go. I don't have any money. I don't have my phone. I don't.
He shook her off like she was dirt. You should have thought of that before you decided to be an embarrassment.
I didn't do anything wrong.
You exist. Derek leaned close. His breath smelled like expensive wine and contempt. That's what you did wrong. You exist in my world, taking up space, draining my resources, making me look like a fool for marrying some nobody off the street. I thought you loved me. Derek laughed again, that horrible, empty sound. Loved you? I felt sorry for you. You were a charity case, Maya, a broken woman with no memory and no future. I gave you a name. I gave you a home. And this is how you repay me? Tears streamed down Maya's face, mixing with the rain blowing in through the door. What do you want me to do? Tell me what to do and I'll do it. I'll be better. You'll leave. Derek grabbed her shoulders and spun her toward the open door. Right now, tonight, walk out into that storm and don't come back. I'll have divorce papers waiting wherever you wash up. Derek, he shoved her. Maya stumbled through the doorway, her thin dress instantly soaked by the driving rain. Her heel caught on the stone step. She fell hard, her knees scraping against the wet concrete, her palms splitting open on the rough surface. She looked up at her husband, standing dry in the doorway, backlit by the warm golden light of the home she had tried so hard to make her own.
Derek, please, I'm begging you.
Goodbye, Maya. He shut the door. She heard the lock click. For a long moment, she just knelt there in the rain, bleeding, shivering, watching the light from the windows paint patterns on the flooding driveway. Then she started to crawl. Inside the mansion, Derek smoothed his hair and walked back to the dining room. He grabbed a fresh glass of champagne from a passing waiter and raised it toward his guests. My apologies for the interruption. Where were we? Thomas Whitmore hadn't sat back down. He stood near the window, watching the rain pound against the glass. That was... Thomas struggled for words. That was excessive, Derek. That was necessary. Derek settled into his chair at the head of the table. You said it yourself at our last meeting, Thomas. A man's personal life reflects his professional judgment. A man who can't control his household can't control a company. I didn't mean, I just showed you I can make hard decisions. I can cut loose dead weight. I can prioritize what matters. Derek smiled his most charming smile. Holloway Pharmaceuticals is about to revolutionize cancer treatment, Thomas. Are you really going to let a domestic dispute get in the way of a 20% return? Silence. Vanessa reached over and placed her hand on Thomas's arm. He's right, you know. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone go. Maya clearly needs professional help. Derek has been so patient with her. Thomas looked at Vanessa's hand, looked at Derek's confident smile, looked at the other investors around the table, their faces neutral, their calculators running the numbers in their heads. $80 million, 20% return. He sat down. Let's discuss the terms, Thomas said quietly. Derek's smile widened. Maya made it to the end of the driveway before her legs gave out. The rain was coming down so hard she could barely see. Her dress clung to her body like a second skin, her hair plastered against her face. Every breath felt like drowning.
She collapsed against the iron gate, her fingers wrapping around the cold metal bars. Locked. Of course it was locked. The Sterling Hills community had walls and gates and security cameras. It kept the world out and the residents safe. But tonight it was a prison, and Maya was trapped on the wrong side. She squeezed through the pedestrian gap in the gate, scraping her shoulder on the iron. The pain barely registered.
The main road stretched into darkness in both directions. No streetlights this far out. No sidewalks. No passing cars on a night like this. Maya started walking. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't stop. If she stopped, she would lie down. If she lay down, she would close her eyes. If she closed her eyes... A car horn blared. Headlights blinded her. Maya threw up her arms as a sedan swerved around her, spraying dirty water across her already soaked body. The driver didn't stop, didn't slow down, just laid on the horn and vanished into the storm. She stumbled off the road and into the grass. Her ankle twisted. She fell. And this time, she didn't try to get back up. The rain hammered down, filling her mouth, blurring her vision. She could feel the cold seeping into her bones, slowing her heartbeat, numbing her fingers. This is how I die, she thought, face down in a ditch, nobody knowing my name, nobody caring. She closed her eyes.
Please, she whispered to whoever might be listening, please help me.
The convoy appeared like a vision. 3 vehicles, black SUVs flanking a Bentley Mulsanne, their headlights cutting through the rain like searchlights. They weren't speeding. They moved with purpose, with power, with the quiet confidence of people who owned the roads they drove on. The lead vehicle slowed, stopped. A door opened. Maya heard boots on wet pavement, splashing through puddles, coming toward her. "Ma'am?" A deep voice, professional, concerned. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" She tried to speak. Her lips were too numb. Strong hands turned her over. She blinked up at a man in a black suit, rain streaming down his face, an earpiece in his ear. "Sir," the man called over his shoulder. "Sir, you need to see this." Another door opened. Different footsteps now. Slower. The tap of a cane against pavement. Maya's vision was blurring. She could barely make out the figure approaching, backlit by the Bentley's headlights. Tall, silver-haired, something familiar about the way he moved. The man stopped. He looked down at her face, and his entire body went rigid. Maya. The name came out as a whisper, a prayer, a ghost. Maya blinked. How do you know?" The man dropped to his knees in the mud, ignoring his expensive coat, ignoring the rain soaking through his clothes. He cupped her face in his hands, warm hands, shaking hands, and looked at her like she was something precious that had been lost and found again. "My God," he breathed. Tears were streaming down his weathered face, mixing with the rain. "Maya. My Maya. He told me you were dead. He told me you died in the accident." "Who?" Maya struggled to focus. "Who are you?" The old man's face crumbled. "James!" he shouted. "Get blankets! Get the car ready! Call doctor!"
"Patterson, tell her I'm bringing my daughter home." "Daughter?" Maya's voice cracked. I don't understand." The man lifted her gently, cradling her against his chest like she weighed nothing. "My name is William Thompson," he said, his voice breaking. "I am your father, and you have been missing for 5 years." Maya stared at him. The world tilted. That's impossible. Derek told me." "Derek Holloway is a liar and a thief." William's eyes blazed with a fury that seemed to warm the air around them. "He stole you from me.
He stole 5 years of your life, and tonight—" His jaw tightened. "Tonight I am going to make him pay for every single day." He carried her to the Bentley. The security team surrounded them, holding umbrellas, opening doors, speaking urgently into their earpieces. As William settled Maya into the back seat and wrapped her in cashmere blankets, she grabbed his wrist. "Wait," she said. "Wait. How do I know you're telling the truth? How do I know you're not just—" William reached into his jacket pocket. His hand was trembling as he pulled out a photograph, worn at the edges, protected in a clear sleeve. It was a picture of a young black woman in a white dress, standing in a garden full of roses. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her eyes bright with joy. Behind her stood William, 20 years younger, his arms wrapped around her waist. Maya looked at the photo, looked at William, looked at the photo again. The woman in the picture was her. "That was your 23rd birthday," William said softly, "at our estate in Martha's Vineyard. You wore your mother's dress. You made me dance even though I have 2 left feet. You said—" His voice broke. "You said you wanted to remember that day forever." Maya touched her own face, touched the face in the photo. I can't remember." "You don't have to." William closed his hand over hers. "Not yet. Not tonight. Tonight you're safe. Tonight you're coming home. The memories will come when you're ready." He turned to his head of security. "James." "Yes, sir." "The Holloway mansion." William's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "Do you have the team in position?" "Awaiting your orders, sir." William looked back at Maya, at the bruises forming on her arms, at the blood drying on her knees, at the fear and confusion in her eyes. "Give the order," he said.
"We're crashing Mr. Holloway's party."
Back at the mansion, Derek was on his 3rd glass of champagne. The deal was almost closed. Thomas Whitmore had stopped asking uncomfortable questions. The other investors had returned to their comfortable numbness, laughing at Derek's jokes, admiring Vanessa's dress, pretending they hadn't just watched a man throw his wife into a hurricane. "To Holloway Pharmaceuticals," Derek raised his glass. "And to the future of medicine." "To the future," the guests echoed. Crystal clinked. Derek smiled. And then the lights went out. The entire mansion plunged into darkness. Guests gasped. Someone dropped a glass. The emergency generator should have kicked in immediately, but they didn't. "What the hell?" Derek pushed back from the table. "Peterson, where's the damn security?" No answer. Thunder crashed outside, shaking the windows. And then— boom! The front doors exploded inward. Not opened, exploded. The solid oak panels flew off their hinges and slammed onto the marble floor with a force that rattled the chandeliers. Rain and wind poured through the gaping entrance. And in that entrance, silhouetted by lightning, stood a figure. An old man, silver-haired, leaning on a cane, flanked by men in tactical black. Derek squinted into the darkness. "Who the hell are you? This is private property. I'll have you arrested." The old man stepped forward. Lightning flashed again, and Derek Holloway saw his face. Every drop of blood drained from Derek's cheeks. "No," he whispered. "No. You can't be here. You can't—" "Hello, Derek." William Thompson walked into the light. Behind him, supported by 2 security guards, but standing on her own feet, was Maya. Her dress was still wet. Her knees were still bleeding. But her eyes had changed. "I believe," William said, his voice carrying across the silent room like a death sentence, "that you have something that belongs to me." Derek stumbled backward. Thomas Whitmore rose slowly from his seat, his face white as paper. Mr. Thompson? William Thompson? Of Thompson Healthcare? William didn't look at him. His eyes never left Derek. You stole my daughter, William said, each word dropping like a stone. You stole 5 years of her life. You stole her memories, her identity, her sense of self. You made her believe she was worthless. You made her believe she was lucky to be your charity case. He took another step forward. Derek took another step back. And tonight, William continued, you threw her out into a hurricane because she embarrassed you in front of your business partners. I can explain. Can you? William's cane struck the marble floor with a crack that made everyone jump.
Can you explain the forged medical records from the hospital in Lyon?
Can you explain the death certificate you had fabricated? Can you explain the checks you've been cashing from her trust fund for 5 years? Derek's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. I thought not. William turned to face the room full of investors. His presence seemed to fill every corner, commanding attention without raising his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for interrupting your evening, but I thought you should know exactly who you're doing business with before you sign any contracts. He gestured toward Derek. This man is not a visionary entrepreneur. He is a con artist, a thief, and an abuser. He built Holloway Pharmaceuticals on embezzled funds. He maintained his lifestyle by stealing from a woman who couldn't remember her own name. And the $8 million sitting in his company accounts right now? That came from my daughter's inheritance, money he's been siphoning for 5 years while telling me she was dead. That's a lie, Derek found his voice. That's slander. I'll sue you into oblivion. Will you? William reached into his pocket and produced a thick envelope. He tossed it onto the dining table. Bank records, wire transfers, the original marriage certificate from Lyon, the one you filed before realizing Maya was connected to my family, the receipt from the pawn shop where you sold her mother's locket, and, he smiled coldly, testimony from your mistress, Miss Cole, detailing every illegal transaction she helped you execute over the past 3 years. Every head in the room turned to Vanessa. She was already backing toward the service entrance, her face twisted with panic. I don't know what he's talking about, she said quickly. I'm just an employee. I didn't know anything about... Vanessa, Derek's voice cracked. Vanessa, tell them. Tell them I'm innocent. She looked at him, looked at William, looked at the FBI badges visible under the jackets of several men who had just entered through the destroyed doorway. I want a lawyer, she said, and I want immunity. You lying? Derek lunged at her. 2 security guards intercepted him, slamming him against the wall hard enough to knock family portraits to the floor. Get your hands off me! This is my house! These are my guests! You can't do this! William walked slowly toward him. Your house. William's voice was soft now, almost gentle. I own the bank that holds your mortgage. Your guests? Half of them will be testifying against you by morning. Your company? He smiled. I just bought a controlling interest in your investors' fund, which means, as of about... He checked his watch. 20 minutes ago, I own Holloway Pharmaceuticals. Derek stopped struggling. What? Did you really think I would let the man who stole my daughter keep anything? William leaned close. I've been planning this for 3 weeks, ever since my investigators finally tracked Maya down. I didn't just come here to rescue her, Derek. I came here to destroy you. Completely. Permanently. In front of everyone you were trying to impress. He straightened up. And now, William said, stepping back, I think there's someone who would like to say something to you. He turned. Maya was standing in the middle of the room. She wasn't hiding anymore. Wasn't hunching her shoulders. Wasn't looking at the floor. She was looking directly at Derek. Maya. Derek's voice shifted instantly, sliding into the soft, caring tone he used when he wanted something from her. Maya, baby, I'm sorry. I lost my temper. I didn't mean any of it. You know I love you.
You know I'd never really hurt you." Maya walked toward him. The room held its breath.
5 years, Maya said quietly. For 5 years you told me I was stupid. You told me I was useless. You told me I should be grateful that you rescued me from nothing. Baby, you told me no one else would ever want me. You told me I was damaged goods. You told me my memory would never come back, so I should stop trying to remember.
I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. Maya's voice rose. You saw a confused woman in a hospital bed, and you saw an opportunity.
You saw dollar signs. You saw a victim you could control. That's not true. You stole my identity. You stole my father. You stole 5 years of my life. Maya was standing directly in front of him now. And tonight, you threw me into a storm and told me to die in a gutter. I didn't mean crack. Maya's palm connected with Derek's face hard enough to snap his head sideways. The sound echoed through the silent room. My name is Maya Thompson, she said, her voice steady and strong. I am the daughter of William Thompson. I am a graduate of Harvard Law School, and I am done being your victim. She turned her back on him. Take him, she said. The FBI moved in. As they cuffed Derek Holloway and read him his rights, as Vanessa Cole was led away in a separate vehicle, as the investors scattered like roaches in light, Maya walked through the shattered doorway and out into the rain. William was waiting by the car. Are you ready to go home? He asked. Maya looked back at the mansion one last time, at the life she was leaving behind, at the prison she hadn't known she was in. Yes, she said, and for the first time in 5 years, she smiled. The Bentley moved through the storm like a ship through dark waters. Maya sat wrapped in cashmere blankets, shivering not from cold anymore, but from something deeper. Shock, maybe. Or the slow crumbling of everything she thought she knew. William sat across from her, his eyes never leaving her face. He looked like a man afraid to blink, afraid she might disappear again if he looked away for even a second. I don't remember you, Maya whispered. I'm sorry. I know you want me to remember, but I don't. You don't need to apologize. William's voice was thick with emotion. You don't owe me anything, Maya. Not memories, not explanations. Nothing. But you're my father. Yes. And I've been married to Derek for 5 years. 4 years and 7 months. William's jaw tightened. I counted every day. Maya pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Her mind was spinning, trying to reconcile the life she knew with the life this stranger was describing. How did you find me? She asked. After all this time, how did you know? William reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn leather folder. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. 6 years ago, he began, you were driving to meet me for lunch. We were going to discuss your joining the company. You had just passed the bar exam, top of your class at Harvard Law. He smiled sadly. You were always the smartest person in any room, Maya, even as a child. Your mother used to say you were too brilliant for your own good. My mother? Grace. William's voice softened on the name. She passed when you were 19. Breast cancer. You were devastated. We both were, but you threw yourself into your studies. You said you wanted to make her proud. Maya touched her chest, feeling for something that wasn't there. A memory that wouldn't come. The accident, she prompted. William nodded slowly. You were driving through upstate New York. A truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. He crossed the center line. You swerved to avoid him and went off an embankment. He paused, his composure cracking. The car rolled 6 times before landing in a river. The truck driver called 911, but by the time emergency services arrived, the current had carried the car downstream. They found the vehicle 3 days later, empty. But I survived. You survived.
William's voice broke. You crawled out of that river somehow. You made it to a road. A passing motorist found you and drove you to a hospital in Lyon, a small town 60 miles from the crash site. You had severe head trauma. No identification, no memory of who you were.
A Jane Doe, Maya said quietly. For 6 months, I was searching everywhere, Maya. I hired every private investigator in the country. I offered a $10 million reward for information. But they were looking in the wrong places. No one thought to check small rural hospitals 60 miles from the crash site. And Derek? William's expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. Derek Holloway was volunteering at that hospital. He was 28 years old, drowning in debt, working as an orderly while he tried to figure out his next con. And then one day, he walked into your room and saw a beautiful woman with no memory, wearing a platinum locket with the Thompson family crest. Maya's hand flew to her throat. The locket. She remembered Derek taking it from her in those early days, telling her it was worthless costume jewelry, telling her he'd put it somewhere safe. He researched the crest, William continued. He found out exactly who you were. And instead of contacting me, instead of reuniting a lost daughter with her father, he saw an opportunity. The trust fund, Maya said, the pieces clicking together. Your mother left you $40 million. I added another 60 to it on your 21st birthday. $100 million, Maya, sitting in a trust that you couldn't access until you were 30, or until you got married. The truth hit her like a physical blow. He married me for the money. He married you within 3 months of meeting you. A quick civil ceremony in London. No witnesses except his lawyer. By the time I found out you were alive, he had already accessed $23 million from your trust. $23 million? Maya's voice rose. He told me we were struggling. He told me we couldn't afford new clothes for me. He said money was tight. He said a lot of things. William pulled out another document from his folder. He also told me you were dead. Maya froze. What? 6 months after your accident, I received an anonymous letter. It contained a photograph of a woman's body pulled from a river in France. The face was unrecognizable, but the height and weight matched yours. Attached was a forged coroner's report claiming the body had been identified through dental records. William's hands shook as he showed her the photograph. Maya looked away, unable to stomach it. I believed it, William said, his voice hollow. I was so desperate for answers, for closure, that I believed it. I held a funeral, Maya. I buried an empty coffin. I gave a eulogy for a daughter who was alive 60 miles away, married to the man who sent me that letter. Tears streamed down Maya's face. How could he do that? How could anyone do that? Because he's a monster. William tucked the documents away. A monster who saw my grief on the news and decided it was easier to let a father bury his daughter than to give up his meal ticket. The Bentley turned onto a private road. Through the rain-streaked windows, Maya could see iron gates swinging open. A long driveway lined with oak trees, lights glowing from a massive stone house in the distance. Where are we? Home. William reached across and took her hand. Thompson Manor. You grew up here, Maya. You took your first steps in the garden. You learned to ride horses in those stables. You played piano in the music room for hours every day. Piano? You were extraordinary. Juilliard recruited you when you were 16. You turned them down because you wanted to go to law school instead. William smiled through his tears. You said music was your joy, but justice was your calling. The car stopped in front of the house. Immediately, staff members appeared with umbrellas, opening doors, creating a covered pathway to the entrance. A woman in her 60s rushed out, her face wet with tears. "Miss Maya!" she cried. "Oh Lord, Miss Maya, you're home!" Maya stepped out of the car and found herself engulfed in a fierce embrace.
Mrs. Patterson, William said gently. Give her some space. She doesn't remember yet. The woman pulled back, cupping Maya's face in her hands. You don't remember me, baby girl? Maya shook her head, guilt flooding through her. I'm sorry. I don't. I'm Henrietta Patterson.
I've been the housekeeper here for 32 years. I helped your mama bring you home from the hospital when you were born. I taught you how to braid your hair. I made you chocolate chip pancakes every Sunday morning until you left for college. Something flickered in Maya's mind. A smell, vanilla and butter, a warm kitchen, a laugh that sounded like bells. Pancakes, Maya whispered. Mrs. Patterson's face lit up. You remember? I don't know, maybe. There's something. William put his arm around Maya's shoulders. Don't push yourself. The doctor said your memories may come back gradually, or they may not come back at all. Either way, you're safe now. You're home. He guided her inside. The house was nothing like Derek's mansion. Where Derek's home had been all glass and steel and sharp edges, Thompson Manor was warm. Rich wood paneling, soft rugs, photographs everywhere. On the walls, on the mantel, on every available surface. Maya stopped in front of a large portrait hanging in the foyer. It showed a young woman in graduation robes, holding a diploma, smiling at the camera with a confidence Maya couldn't imagine feeling. Is that me? Harvard Law, 2017. Top of your class. The professor who handed you that diploma told me privately that you were the most brilliant student he'd taught in 40 years. Maya stared at the woman in the portrait. She looked so sure of herself, so strong, so complete. I don't feel like her, Maya admitted. I don't feel brilliant. I don't feel strong. I feel like exactly what Derek always said I was. Damaged. Broken. Lucky to have someone willing to take care of me. William turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. Listen to me, Maya. What Derek did to you wasn't just physical abuse. It was psychological warfare. He deliberately kept you confused and dependent. He isolated you from anyone who might trigger your memory. He systematically destroyed your self-esteem so you would never question him, never leave him, never realize you were worth 1,000 of him. But how do you know that? How do you know he didn't just fall in love with a woman who had no memory and tried to give her a good life? William's expression was steady. Because I have 3 years of surveillance footage, bank records, emails between him and his mistress laughing about how stupid you were. Recordings of phone calls where he discussed moving the money offshore before you could remember enough to ask questions. Maya felt sick. You've been watching him? I've been building a case against him. From the moment my investigators discovered you were alive 3 weeks ago, I've been gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I wasn't just going to rescue you, Maya. I was going to make sure he could never hurt you, or anyone else, ever again. 3 weeks? Maya pulled back. You've known I was alive for 3 weeks, and you didn't come for me? I wanted to. God, Maya, you have no idea how many times I got in that car, ready to drive to Connecticut, and put a bullet between his eyes. William's voice cracked. But my lawyers convinced me to wait, to gather evidence, to do this properly. If I had just shown up and taken you, Derek could have claimed kidnapping. He could have used your mental state against both of us. I needed to catch him in the act of something so despicable that no court could ever believe his lies. So you waited for him to throw me out. I had people watching the house. The moment he put his hands on you, they called me. I was already in Connecticut, 5 miles away, waiting. William's face twisted with anguish. I'm sorry I couldn't get there faster. I'm sorry you had to feel that rain, that cold, that fear. I'm sorry I couldn't spare you those last few moments of pain. Maya looked at her father, this man she didn't remember, but who had clearly spent 5 years mourning her and 3 weeks planning her rescue down to the minute. You really are my father, she said quietly.
Yes.
And Derek really is a monster.
Yes. Maya walked deeper into the house, trailing her fingers along the wood paneling, looking at photographs she didn't recognize but felt somehow connected to.
She stopped in front of a picture of a beautiful black woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile.
My mother? William came up behind her. Grace Elizabeth Thompson. She was a pediatric surgeon. She worked 60 hours a week saving children's lives, and she still made it home every night to cook dinner and help you with your homework. She was the best person I ever knew. How did you meet her? She saved my nephew's life. He was born with a heart defect. Every doctor said he wouldn't survive. Grace operated on him for 12 hours and gave him a full life. William smiled at the memory. I walked into that hospital to thank her, and I never left. 34 years of marriage. She made me a better man every single day. Maya touched the photograph. Something stirred in her chest. Not a memory exactly, but a feeling. Love. Loss. The echo of something precious that had been taken from her.
I wish I could remember her,
Maya whispered.
You will, or you won't.
Either way, I'll tell you every story. I'll show you every photograph. I'll help you know her, even if you can't remember her. A young woman in medical scrubs appeared in the doorway. Mr. Thompson, I'm Dr. Okafor. You called about a neurological evaluation? Yes, thank you for coming so quickly. William guided Maya toward the woman. This is my daughter, Maya. She suffered a traumatic brain injury 6 years ago, resulting in severe amnesia. Tonight, she experienced additional physical trauma and extreme emotional stress. I need you to examine her and tell me what we're dealing with. Dr. Okafor nodded professionally. Of course. Maya, if you'll come with me, I'd like to do a full examination in private. Maya hesitated, looking back at William. It's okay, he assured her. Dr. Okafor is the best neurologist on the East Coast. I'll be right here when you're done. Maya followed the doctor to a room that had been set up as a medical suite. For the next 2 hours, she underwent tests, physical examinations, cognitive assessments, questions about her memories, what she could recall, what she couldn't, what felt familiar versus what felt completely foreign. Finally, Dr. Okafor sat down across from her. I'm going to be honest with you, Maya. Your case is complex. Is my brain damaged permanently? Not exactly. The initial trauma from your accident caused significant injury to your hippocampus and temporal lobe, the areas responsible for memory formation and retrieval. However, the brain has remarkable plasticity. In many cases like yours, memories can return gradually, especially when the patient is exposed to familiar environments, people, and sensory triggers. So, I might remember everything? You might remember some things. You might remember nothing. You might experience fragments, smells, sounds, feelings that connect to memories without fully accessing them. Dr. Okafor paused. But here's what concerns me. Based on what you've described about your life with your husband, you were living in an environment of constant psychological manipulation. He reinforced your amnesia. He told you stories about your past that were lies. He actively discouraged you from trying to remember. He gaslit me extensively. And that kind of sustained psychological abuse can actually strengthen the barriers your brain built after the initial trauma. Your mind learned that trying to remember was dangerous, that questions led to punishment, that confusion was safer than clarity. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. So Derek didn't just steal my memories. He made it impossible for me to get them back. He made it harder, not impossible. Dr. Okafor leaned forward. You're in a safe environment now, Maya. You're surrounded by people who want you to heal. The barriers Derek built can be dismantled. It will take time. It will take patience. But I've seen patients recover from worse. What do I do?
For now, rest, eat, sleep. Let your father show you photographs, tell you stories. Don't force anything. Let the memories come when they're ready. Dr. Okafor stood. And if you remember something, anything, no matter how small, write it down. Sometimes the smallest fragments lead to the biggest breakthroughs. Maya returned to the main room, where William was waiting by the fireplace. He looked up hopefully. What did she say? That I might remember, or I might not. That Derek made everything worse by lying to me for 5 years. Maya sank into a chair. She said to rest, to let you tell me stories. I have enough stories to fill a lifetime. William sat across from her. But first, you need to sleep. Mrs. Patterson has prepared your old room. Everything is exactly how you left it. My old room? Come, I'll show you. He led her upstairs, down a hallway lined with more photographs, to a door at the end of the hall. He opened it and stepped aside. Maya walked in and stopped cold. The room was beautiful. Soft lavender walls, a canopy bed with white linens, a bay window with a cushioned seat overlooking the gardens, bookshelves crammed with law textbooks and classic novels, a vanity covered with photographs and keepsakes, and in the corner, a piano. A baby grand, its surface gleaming, its keys perfect ivory. Maya walked toward it, as if pulled by an invisible string. She sat on the bench. Her hands hovered over the keys. I haven't touched this since you disappeared, William said from the doorway. I couldn't bear to hear anyone else play it. Maya looked at the keys. She didn't know how to play piano. Derek had told her she was tone deaf. He had laughed when she hummed and told her to stop because it was annoying. But her hands remembered something. She pressed a single key, middle C. The note rang out clear and pure. And then, without conscious thought, her fingers began to move. She played. Not a simple melody, but something complex, something beautiful. Something that poured out of her like water breaking through a dam. Chopin, Nocturne in E-flat major. She didn't know how she knew that, but she did. Tears streamed down her face as she played. She wasn't remembering exactly. It was more like waking up. Like parts of her that had been asleep for 6 years were finally stirring. When the last note faded, she heard a sound behind her. William was crying. Standing in the doorway, tears streaming down his face, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. You played that for me, he whispered. On your mother's birthday. Every year. It was her favorite piece. Maya looked down at her hands. I didn't know I could do that. You can do anything, Maya. You just forgot for a while. William crossed the room and knelt beside the piano bench. But you're home now, and we have all the time in the world to help you remember who you really are. He kissed her forehead, then stood. Sleep now. Tomorrow we start putting the pieces back together. And tomorrow, his expression hardened. Tomorrow we make sure Derek Holloway never sees daylight again. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Maya sat at the piano for a long time, running her fingers over the keys, trying to coax more memories out of hiding. But nothing else came, just that one piece, that one beautiful, heartbreaking piece that her hands remembered even when her mind couldn't. Finally, exhausted beyond measure, she climbed into the bed that apparently had been hers for the first 23 years of her life. The sheets smelled like lavender. Something stirred in her memory. A woman's voice, soft hands tucking blankets around her, a whispered, "Good night, sweet girl." "Good night, Mama," Maya whispered into the darkness. And for the first time in 5 years, she slept without fear. The next 3 weeks were a strange kind of resurrection.
Maya existed between two worlds, the woman she had been and the woman Derek had tried to make her.
Every day brought new revelations, new fragments, new pieces of a puzzle she was only beginning to understand. Mrs. Patterson became her guide through the past. The housekeeper had known Maya since birth and had an encyclopedic memory for details. "You used to hide under this table when you were 3, Mrs. Patterson said one morning, pointing to an antique piece in the study. "Every time your daddy had business meetings, you'd crawl under there with your dolls and pretend you were running your own company." "I don't remember that." "Maybe not up here," Mrs. Patterson tapped her own head. "But you might remember it in here." She touched her heart. "Give it time, baby girl." William was patient but purposeful. He showed her photographs every day, told her stories every night, introduced her to family friends who had known her before the accident. Some triggered faint stirrings of recognition. Others felt like meeting strangers. The lawyers came too, teams of them, with boxes of documents and endless questions about her life with Derek. Maya answered as best she could, watching their faces grow grimmer with each revelation. "He controlled everything," she told them. "The money, the food, what I wore, who I talked to. I wasn't allowed to have a phone. I wasn't allowed to drive. I wasn't allowed to leave the house without permission." "Did he ever physically harm you?" Maya touched her arm, where the bruises from that night were finally fading. "He grabbed me, pushed me, slapped me when he was angry. But the worst part wasn't the physical stuff. It was..." She struggled to find words. "He made me believe I was worthless. He made me believe I was lucky to have him. He made me believe that without him, I would die." "That's textbook coercive control," one of the lawyers said. "Combined with the financial fraud and identity theft, he's looking at 20 to 30 years minimum." "And Vanessa?" "She's cooperating fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's provided documentation of every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every conversation where Derek discussed his plans." Maya nodded slowly. "Good." But justice through lawyers and courts felt abstract, distant. What Maya wanted was something more immediate. She got it 3 weeks after her rescue, when the news arrived that Derek's trial date had been set. "They want you to testify," William told her over breakfast. Maya set down her coffee cup. "When?" "6 weeks from now. The prosecution says your testimony could be the deciding factor. A jury needs to hear what he did from you. They need to see who he really is." "I'll do it." "Maya, are you sure? It won't be easy. His lawyers will try to discredit you. They'll claim your memory is unreliable. They'll say your father manipulated you. Let them try." Maya's voice was stronger than it had been since her rescue. "I spent 5 years being told I was weak and stupid. I'm not going to let Derek's lawyers tell me the same thing." William smiled, a proud, fierce smile. "There's my daughter." Over the following weeks, Maya threw herself into preparation. She worked with the prosecutors, going over every detail of her life with Derek. She practiced her testimony until she could deliver it without breaking down. And slowly, steadily, the pieces of her old life began coming back. It happened in fragments at first. A memory of racing through these halls as a child. The taste of Mrs. Patterson's lemon cake triggering a birthday party. The smell of old books bringing back long nights of studying for the bar exam. Then bigger pieces returned. Her mother's face, her mother's voice, the devastating grief of losing her at 19, the determination to make something meaningful of her life. She remembered law school, the thrill of winning arguments, the passion for justice that had driven her to graduate top of her class. And finally, one morning, she remembered herself. Not the confused, broken woman Derek had created. The real Maya Thompson. Brilliant, fierce, unstoppable. "I'm ready," she told William that night. "Ready for what?" "For the trial. For Derek to see who I really am." Maya's eyes glittered with something dangerous. He thought he destroyed me. He thought he erased the person I used to be. But I'm still here. And I'm going to make sure he knows exactly what he lost when he threw me out into that storm. William reached across the table and took his daughter's hand. He has no idea what's coming, he said quietly. No, Maya agreed. He doesn't. The phone rang. William answered, listened, and his face went cold. When? A pause. We'll be there. He hung up and looked at Maya. Derek's filed a motion. He's claiming you went with him willingly, that you were never kidnapped, that you're only saying these things because I've brainwashed you into wanting his money. Maya laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Of course he did. There's more. His lawyers have demanded a pre-trial hearing. They want you to testify under oath before the trial even begins, to prove you're mentally competent, to prove your memories are reliable. When? Next week. Maya stood up from the table. She walked to the window and looked out at the gardens where she had apparently played as a child. Gardens she was only now beginning to remember. Good, she said finally. Good? She turned to face her father, and William saw something in her eyes that made his heart swell with pride. The broken woman who had crawled through a storm was gone. In her place stood Maya Thompson, lawyer, heiress, survivor. Derek wants to play games in a courtroom? Maya smiled coldly. He seems to have forgotten who he married. I graduated top of my class at Harvard Law. I was being recruited by the best firms in the country before he stole my life. She straightened her shoulders. If he wants a legal battle, I'll give him one. And by the time I'm done, he won't just be going to prison. He'll be begging for it. The courthouse steps were swarming with reporters when Maya arrived. Cameras flashed from every direction, microphones thrust toward her face. Questions shouted over each other in a cacophony of noise. Maya! Maya! Is it true you were held captive for 5 years? Did Derek Holloway really steal your identity? Are you mentally competent to testify? Maya walked through them without flinching. She wore a tailored navy suit that cost more than Derek's entire wardrobe. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant twist. Her posture was straight, her chin high, her eyes focused on the courthouse doors ahead. William walked beside her, flanked by security. He had offered to shield her from the press, to bring her in through a back entrance, but Maya had refused. I want him to see me, she had said that morning. I want Derek to watch me walk through that crowd and know that I'm not afraid of him anymore. Now, as they reached the courthouse doors, Maya paused. She turned to face the cameras one last time. I have no comment at this time, she said clearly, her voice carrying over the noise. But I will say this. The truth always comes out. Always. She turned and walked inside. The hearing room was smaller than Maya had expected. Wood-paneled walls, a judge's bench at the front, 2 tables facing each other, prosecution on one side, defense on the other. And there, sitting at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit with his wrists shackled, was Derek Holloway. Maya stopped in the doorway. For 5 years, this man had been the center of her universe. He had controlled what she ate, what she wore, who she spoke to. He had convinced her that she was nothing without him, that she was lucky he tolerated her existence. Now she looked at him, really looked, and saw him clearly for the first time. He looked smaller somehow. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. 3 weeks in jail had stripped away the polish and confidence. The man who had thrown her into a hurricane looked like exactly what he was, a scared con artist who had finally been caught. Derek's eyes found hers. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Hope, maybe. Or calculation. He leaned toward his lawyer and whispered something.
Maya walked past him without acknowledgement and took her seat at the prosecution table.
All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. The judge entered, a stern black woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. Maya felt a flicker of something like recognition. Had she appeared before this judge before the accident? She couldn't remember, but something about the woman felt familiar. "Be seated," Judge Morrison said. She shuffled papers, then looked up. "We're here for a competency hearing in the matter of the state versus Derek Allen Holloway. The defense has filed a motion claiming that the primary witness, Maya Thompson, is mentally incompetent to testify due to her documented amnesia and alleged manipulation by her father." She turned her gaze to the defense table. "Mr. Crawford, you may proceed." Derek's lawyer stood. He was a tall, thin man with silver hair and an expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who charged $1,000 an hour and earned every penny by making victims look like liars. "Thank you, Your Honor." Crawford buttoned his jacket and approached the center of the room. The defense contends that Maya Thompson cannot provide reliable testimony in this case. She suffered a traumatic brain injury 6 years ago that resulted in complete retrograde amnesia. She has no memory of her life before the accident, no memory of meeting Mr. Holloway, and no independent recollection of the events she claims occurred during their marriage. He paused for effect. Furthermore, Maya Thompson has been living with her father, William Thompson, for the past 3 weeks. Mr. Thompson is a billionaire with significant resources and a powerful motive to destroy my client. We believe that any testimony Maya provides has been coached, manipulated, and designed to support a predetermined narrative. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named District Attorney Vivian Chen, stood immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. The defense is making accusations without evidence. There's been no indication that Maya Thompson has been coached or manipulated in any way." "I'm simply stating our position," Crawford replied smoothly, "which we will support with evidence during this hearing." Judge Morrison held up a hand. "Save the arguments for testimony. Mr. Crawford, call your first witness." The defense calls Maya Thompson to the stand. Maya stood. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. She walked to the witness stand, raised her right hand, and took the oath. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do." She sat down. Crawford approached her with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Good morning, Miss Thompson. Or should I say, Mrs. Holloway?" "Thompson," Maya said firmly. "My legal name has always been Maya Thompson. My marriage to your client was void from the beginning. We'll let the court decide that." Crawford clasped his hands behind his back. "Now, Miss Thompson, let's establish some baseline facts. You suffered a traumatic brain injury 6 years ago, correct?" "Yes, and as a result of that injury, you lost all memory of your life before the accident?" "That's correct." "You don't remember your childhood, your education, your mother?" Maya's jaw tightened. "I've recovered some memories since returning to my father's home. But no, at the time of the accident, I remembered nothing." "Interesting." Crawford began to pace. "So when you woke up in that hospital in Lyon, France, you had no idea who you were?" "No." "No idea where you came from?" "No." "No idea that you were supposedly the heir to a $12 billion fortune?" "No." Crawford turned to face her directly. "And yet you expect this court to believe that my client, a man who married you, supported you, and cared for you for nearly 5 years, somehow manipulated you? That he's the villain in this story?" "He didn't care for me," Maya said steadily. "He controlled me. There's a difference." "Controlled you how?" "He isolated me from the world. He took my phone. He forbade me from driving. He monitored every conversation I had. He told me I was stupid, worthless,
Lucky that anyone would want me. He slapped me when I asked questions. He shoved me when I displeased him. And when I embarrassed him in front of his investors, he threw me out into a hurricane and told me to die. Crawford waved his hand dismissively. You claim all of this, but you have no independent memory of meeting my client.
Isn't it possible that your recollection of these events has been shaped by what your father has told you? My recollection of these events is shaped by living through them, Maya replied. I may not remember my life before Derek, but I remember every single day of my life with him. Every insult, every slap, every time he made me feel like nothing. But your memory is compromised. DHN stood. Objection, Your Honor. The witness's amnesia relates to events before her injury, not after. There's no medical evidence suggesting her memory of the past 5 years is impaired in any way. Sustained, Judge Morrison said. Move on, Mr. Crawford. Crawford's smile tightened. Very well. Miss Thompson, let's talk about the night of the incident. You claim my client threw you out of his home. But isn't it true that you were behaving erratically? That you were causing the scene at an important business dinner? I spilled wine accidentally. Or rather, Vanessa Cole knocked over the glass, and Derek blamed me. Vanessa Cole, my client's chief marketing officer? His mistress. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Crawford's jaw tightened. That's an unsubstantiated claim. It's substantiated by Vanessa Cole herself, Maya interrupted, who is cooperating with prosecutors and has provided detailed testimony about her 3-year affair with your client, including the fact that they discussed me as an obstacle to be removed. Crawford paused. He hadn't expected her to push back this hard. Miss Thompson, I'm going to be direct with you. You've been living with your billionaire father for 3 weeks. He's provided you with expensive lawyers, private doctors, and presumably anything else you could want. Isn't it possible that you're saying what he wants you to say? That you're playing a role in exchange for access to his fortune? Maya leaned forward, her eyes locked onto Crawford's with an intensity that made him take a half-step back. Mr. Crawford, let me be direct with you. I am a graduate of Harvard Law School. I passed the bar exam at the top of my class. Before your client stole my identity and convinced me I was worthless, I was being recruited by the most prestigious firms in the country. I don't need my father's money. I don't need anyone to tell me what to say. And I certainly don't need to lie about what your client did to me, because the truth is damning enough. She turned to face the judge directly. Your Honor, I have recovered significant memories over the past 3 weeks. I remember my mother's face. I remember my law school graduation. I remember who I was before Derek Holloway found me confused and vulnerable in a hospital bed and decided to exploit me. But even if I never remembered a single thing from before the accident, I would still know exactly what happened during those 5 years, because I lived them. Every humiliation, every bruise, every moment of being told I was nothing. She looked at Derek for the first time since taking the stand. He thought he erased me. He thought he created a new person he could control. But I'm still here, Derek. The woman you tried to destroy is still here, and she remembers everything. Derek's face had gone pale. His hands gripped the edge of the table. Miss Thompson, Crawford said, trying to regain control. Isn't it true that you benefit financially from testifying against my client? That if he's convicted, you'll regain access to your full inheritance? The money in my trust fund is mine. It was always mine. Your client stole $23 million from it while telling me we couldn't afford new clothes. So yes, if he's convicted, I get back what was stolen from me. But I'm not here for money, Mr. Crawford. Then why are you here? Maya's voice dropped to something quiet and dangerous. I'm here because for 5 years I believed I was worthless. I believed I was lucky that anyone would tolerate my existence. I believed that I was so fundamentally broken that I deserved to be treated like garbage.
Your client put those beliefs in my head. He reinforced them every single day. He made me thank him for the privilege of being abused." She pointed at Derek. "I'm here because no woman should ever have to feel the way he made me feel. I'm here because when he threw me out into that storm, he thought he was disposing of trash. And I'm here to show him, and every man like him, that the women they try to destroy have a way of surviving, of fighting back, of making sure the world knows exactly what kind of monsters they really are." The courtroom was dead silent. Crawford opened his mouth to ask another question, but Judge Morrison held up her hand. "I've heard enough." The judge looked at Crawford. "Mr. Crawford, do you have any medical evidence suggesting that Mrs. Thompson's memory of the past 5 years is impaired?" "Well, no, but do you have any evidence, other than speculation, that she has been coached or manipulated by her father?" "Your Honor, the circumstances—" "Yes or no, Mr. Crawford?" "No." Judge Morrison nodded. "Then I'm ruling Miss Thompson competent to testify. Her amnesia relates to events before her injury, not after. She has demonstrated clear recall of relevant events and the cognitive ability to provide testimony." "Motion denied." She banged her gavel. "We'll reconvene for trial proceedings in 4 weeks. Court is adjourned." As the room began to empty, Derek lunged forward against his restraints. "Maya!" he shouted. "Maya, wait!" She turned. "Baby, please." Derek's voice had shifted into that soft, pleading tone she remembered so well. The voice he used when he wanted something. The voice that had kept her trapped for 5 years. "This is all a misunderstanding. I love you. I've always loved you. Your father has poisoned you against me. But if you'll just talk to me, I have nothing to say to you, Derek. We can work this out. We can forget all of this. Just tell them you made a mistake. Tell them you don't remember clearly. We can go back to the way things were." Maya walked toward him slowly. The guards tensed, but she stopped just out of reach. "The way things were?" she repeated softly. "You mean the way you told me I was stupid every day? The way you controlled every aspect of my life? The way you hit me when I asked questions? The way you threw me out to die because I embarrassed you?" "I was stressed. I made mistakes. But I never stopped loving you." "You never started." Maya shook her head. "I used to think I was lucky to have you, Derek. I used to thank God that someone was willing to take care of broken little me. But now I know the truth. You weren't taking care of me. You were keeping me broken. You were making sure I stayed confused and dependent, because the moment I started thinking clearly, your whole con would fall apart." "That's not true. My father sent money to my trust fund every year. Did you know that? Even after he thought I was dead, he kept funding it. A father's love for his daughter, continuing beyond the grave. You intercepted that money. You spent it on your mistress while telling me we couldn't afford groceries." Derek's face twisted. "I needed that money. Nexus was struggling. I was going to pay it back." "Pay back $23 million? From a company built on fraud and embezzlement?" Maya laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You know what the worst part is, Derek? I actually felt sorry for you. When I found out the truth, part of me wanted to believe there was some explanation, some reason why the man I trusted had done these terrible things. But there's no reason, is there? You're just a con artist who got lucky. You found a vulnerable woman and you exploited her for 5 years. That's all you are. That's all you'll ever be." She turned to walk away. "You'll regret this," Derek shouted, his mask finally slipping completely. "You think your father can protect you? You think you're safe? I know people, Maya. I have connections. You can't just—" "Guards," Maya said calmly, without turning around. "Please control the defendant." 2 officers moved to restrain Derek as he continued shouting threats. His lawyer tried to calm him down, but Derek was beyond reason. years of rage and entitlement pouring out in a torrent of venom. Maya walked out of the courtroom without looking back. William was waiting in the hallway. He took one look at her face and opened his arms. She walked into the embrace and let herself be held for a long moment. "You were magnificent," William said softly.
I was terrified.
Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of it. He pulled back and looked at her. "Are you ready for what comes next?"
The trial?
The trial, the press, the public scrutiny. Once this goes to court, your life becomes a matter of public record. Every detail of what Derek did to you will be discussed, analyzed, debated. Are you prepared for that? Maya thought about the woman she had been 3 weeks ago. Broken, afraid, believing she deserved nothing better than what Derek gave her. That woman was gone. "I'm prepared," she said. "But I'm not just going to testify and walk away, Dad." William raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I want to do more. There are women out there right now living the life I lived, trapped with men who control them, abuse them, convince them they're worthless. Women who don't have a billionaire father to rescue them. Women who have no way out. What are you proposing?" Maya straightened her shoulders. "I want to start a foundation. Legal aid for domestic abuse survivors. Counseling services. Safe houses. Everything a woman needs to escape a situation like mine and rebuild her life." William's eyes filled with pride. "That sounds like something your mother would have done." "Really?" Grace spent her whole life helping people who couldn't help themselves. Children, families, anyone who needed her. He touched Maya's cheek. "She would be so proud of you right now. I wish I could remember her better." "You will, and even if you don't, you're becoming her in all the ways that matter." They walked out of the courthouse together. The reporters were still there, but this time Maya paused at the top of the steps. "Miss Thompson, do you have a comment on today's hearing?" Maya took a breath. "I do," she said. "Today, the court ruled that I am competent to testify against my abuser, that my voice matters, that my truth deserves to be heard. I want every woman out there who's been told she's worthless, who's been made to feel small, who's been convinced she has no options. I want you to know that you do have options. You do have a voice, and you deserve better than what you've been given." She paused. "Derek Holloway thought he could erase me. He thought 5 years of psychological abuse would destroy who I was. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure other women know they can survive too." Questions erupted, but Maya simply nodded and walked to the waiting car. As they drove away from the courthouse, William looked at his daughter with something like awe. "You really are remarkable. You know that?" "I'm just getting started." The car turned onto the highway toward home. "The prosecution team wants to meet tomorrow," William said. "They're preparing for the main trial. They want to go over your testimony in detail." "Good. And the neurologist wants to see you again. She says there are some new therapy techniques that might help with memory recovery." "Schedule it." "Maya," William reached over and took her hand. "Slow down. You've been through a trauma. You're allowed to rest." "I rested for 5 years," Maya said quietly. "I spent 5 years being passive, being compliant, being the woman Derek wanted me to be. That's over now. I have work to do." William squeezed her hand. "Then we'll do it together." Back at the Holloway estate, which was now technically Maya's property, pending the outcome of the civil suits, investigators were still processing the scene. They had found hidden cameras in every room, recordings of Derek's conversations with Vanessa, financial documents proving years of fraud. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. "Ms. Thompson," one of William's lawyers called the next morning, "we've received something you need to see."
Maya came into the study, where a laptop was set up. The lawyer pressed play on a video file. Derek's face appeared on screen. He was sitting in his home office, speaking into his phone. "She's completely broken," Derek's recorded voice said with a laugh. "She doesn't remember anything. She doesn't question anything. It's like having a robot wife. She does whatever I tell her." Another voice, Vanessa's, responded through the phone. "And the money?" "Rolling in every month. Thompson keeps funding that trust like clockwork. Best part is, the idiot thinks his daughter is dead, so he'll never know." Derek leaned back in his chair. "I give it another 2 years, maybe 3, and I'll have drained the whole thing. Then I can finally dump her, and we can disappear to the Bahamas." "What about her? What happens to her when you leave?" Derek shrugged. "Not my problem. She's got no memory, no skills, no connections. She'll probably end up in some institution somewhere, or on the streets. Either way, not my concern." The video ended. Maya sat in silence. "There are hours of recordings," the lawyer said quietly. Derek was paranoid about security. He recorded everything in his house, including his own incriminating conversations. He recorded himself admitting to fraud, abuse, and planned abandonment? Yes, his own security system is going to put him in prison for decades. Maya let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "He really is an idiot, isn't he?" "A meticulous idiot, which, fortunately for us, is the best kind." Maya stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over the Thompson estate. Gardens she was beginning to remember. Trees she had climbed as a child. A life that had been stolen from her and was slowly, painfully being restored. "Send everything to the prosecution," she said. "I want Derek to hear his own voice convicting him." "Already done." She nodded. The trial was in 4 weeks. Derek Holloway had no idea what was coming, and Maya Thompson was going to enjoy every single moment of his destruction. That night, she sat at her mother's piano and played until her fingers ached. Chopin gave way to Beethoven. Beethoven gave way to Debussy. Music she didn't remember learning poured out of her like water from a broken dam. Mrs. Patterson found her there at midnight, tears streaming down her face, her hands still moving across the keys. "Miss Maya? Are you all right?" Maya stopped playing. She looked at her hands, hands that remembered what her mind had forgotten. "She used to sit next to me," Maya said softly. "My mother. When I practiced, she would sit right there and listen for hours." Mrs. Patterson's breath caught. "You remember?" "I remember the feeling of her being there, the warmth of her, the way she smelled like vanilla and roses." Maya touched the piano bench beside her. "I remember being happy." Mrs. Patterson sat down next to her and put an arm around her shoulders. "She loved you more than anything in this world," Mrs. Patterson said. "She used to say you were her greatest accomplishment, not the surgeries she performed or the lives she saved. You. Just you." Maya leaned into the embrace. "I'm going to make her proud," she whispered. "Baby girl, you already have." They sat together in silence as the moon rose over Thompson Manor, and somewhere in a holding cell across the state, Derek Holloway was discovering that his own recorded words had just sealed his fate. The morning of the trial, Maya woke before dawn. She lay in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, running through her testimony in her mind. Every detail, every date, every moment of humiliation and abuse that she would have to recount in front of a room full of strangers. A knock on her door. "Come in." William entered, already dressed in a dark suit. He looked tired. He had been working with the legal team until midnight, every night, for the past week. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Maya admitted, "but ready." William sat on the edge of her bed.
something he must have done 1,000 times when she was a child. The gesture felt familiar, even though she couldn't specifically remember it. "You don't have to do this, you know. The recordings alone are probably enough to convict him." "Probably isn't definitely. And besides," Maya sat up, "I need to do this. Not just for the conviction. For me. I need to stand up in that courtroom and tell the world what he did. I need to take back the voice you spent 5 years trying to silence." William nodded slowly. "Your mother was the same way. She never let anyone else fight her battles." "Tell me about her. One more time." "Grace?" William's eyes softened. "She was the strongest person I ever knew. When she walked into a room, everyone noticed. Not because she was loud or demanded attention, just the opposite. She had this quiet power, this sense that she knew exactly who she was and what she believed in, and nothing could shake that." "Was I like her?" "You are like her. More every day." William reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Maya's ear. "She would be so proud of you right now." "I wish she could be here." "She is, in every way that matters." Maya got up and began preparing for the day ahead. Mrs. Patterson had laid out a suit, deep burgundy, powerful but not aggressive. Maya dressed carefully, applied minimal makeup, and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was not the broken creature Derek had created. This woman was Maya Thompson, lawyer, survivor, daughter of Grace. This woman was ready to fight. The courthouse was even more crowded than the competency hearing. News vans lined the street. Protesters held signs supporting Maya. A smaller group held signs supporting Derek. Paid supporters, Williams investigators had confirmed, hired by Derek's remaining allies to create the illusion of public sympathy. Maya walked through the gauntlet of cameras and microphones without pausing. She had said everything she needed to say on the courthouse steps 3 weeks ago. Today, her words were for the jury. Inside, the courtroom was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls. The case had become a media sensation. The billionaire's daughter, the con artist husband, the dramatic rescue in the storm. It had all the elements of a blockbuster movie. But this wasn't entertainment. This was Maya's life. She took her seat at the prosecution table. D.A. Vivian Chen was already there, organizing her notes. "How are you feeling?" Chen asked quietly. "Ready." "Good, because they're going to come at you hard today. Crawford knows the recordings are devastating. His only hope is to discredit you personally. Let him try." The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Morrison took her seat, and then Derek was let in. He looked worse than the last time Maya had seen him. The weeks in jail had not been kind. His face was hollow, his eyes sunken, his once immaculate hair now limp and graying. He wore a suit. His lawyers had fought for that, arguing that an orange jumpsuit would prejudice the jury. But it hung off him like a costume. He met Maya's eyes across the room. She didn't look away. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," D.A. Chen began her opening statement. "This case is about a predator, a man who saw a vulnerable woman and chose to exploit her. A man who spent 5 years systematically abusing, controlling, and stealing from a woman who couldn't even remember her own name." She walked toward the jury box. Derek Holloway is not a tragic figure. He is not a man who made mistakes out of love. He is a calculated criminal who saw Maya Thompson, confused, amnesiac, wealthy, and saw a lottery ticket. For 5 years, he cashed that ticket. He stole $23 million from her trust fund. He isolated her from the world. He convinced her she was worthless. And when she became inconvenient, he threw her out into a hurricane and told her to die. Chen paused. The evidence in this case is overwhelming. Financial records, witness testimony, and most damning of all, Derek Holloway's own words,
recorded by his own security system, admitting to every crime we're about to prove. She turned to face Derek directly. The defense will try to confuse you. They'll claim Maya Thompson's memory is unreliable. They'll claim her father manipulated her. They'll throw every distraction they can think of against the wall and hope something sticks. But the evidence doesn't lie. Derek Holloway is guilty, and it's time he finally faced justice.
Crawford's opening was exactly what Chen had predicted. He painted Derek as a loving husband who had rescued a confused woman and given her a home. He suggested that William Thompson was the real villain, a controlling billionaire who couldn't accept that his daughter had chosen a different life. He implied that Maya's memories were manufactured, her testimony coached, her motivations financial. Maya listened to it all without expression. She had expected this. She was ready. The prosecution's case began with the financial evidence. Forensic accountants testified about the money trail. $23 million siphoned from Maya's trust fund over 5 years, funneled into shell companies and offshore accounts. Bank records showed Derek's lavish spending, while he told Maya they couldn't afford groceries. Then came Vanessa Cole. Derek's former mistress walked into the courtroom in a conservative gray dress, her face carefully blank. She had cut a deal with prosecutors, reduced charges in exchange for full cooperation. Now she was about to betray the man she had helped defraud for 3 years. Ms. Cole, DHN began, can you describe your relationship with the defendant? Vanessa's eyes flickered to Derek, then away. We were romantically involved for 3 years. During that time, I also helped him manage certain financial matters. What kind of financial matters? Moving money, falsifying documents, creating shell companies to hide assets. And were you aware that this money belonged to Maya Thompson? Yes. Did the defendant ever discuss his wife with you? Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. Frequently. What did he say? He called her... Vanessa paused. He called her his golden goose. He said she was too stupid to realize what was happening. He said by the time she figured it out, if she ever did, he would be long gone. Did he ever express any genuine affection for her? No. He despised her. He complained about having to touch her. He said the only thing that made it bearable was knowing how much money she was worth. Derek's face was reddening. His lawyer put a restraining hand on his arm. Miss Cole, did you ever witness the defendant physically abuse his wife? Once. I was at the house when Maya dropped a plate in the kitchen. Derek slapped her so hard she fell. Then he made her clean up the broken pieces on her hands and knees while he watched. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Several jurors looked disgusted. What did you do? Vanessa looked down. Nothing. I laughed. Derek laughed. We went back to what we were doing. Do you regret that now? Every day, Vanessa's voice cracked. I told myself she was just some confused woman who didn't matter. I told myself Derek was the victim, stuck in a marriage with someone who couldn't even function. But that wasn't true. She was a person we treated like garbage, and I have to live with that. Crawford's cross-examination tried to paint Vanessa as an unreliable witness, a scorned woman seeking revenge. But Vanessa held firm, and the financial records supported everything she said. Then came the recordings. The prosecution played Derek's own voice for the jury. Hours of conversations where he discussed his plans, mocked his wife, detailed his fraudulent schemes. The jury heard him call Maya a brain-dead cash cow. They heard him laugh about intercepting her father's money. They heard him tell Vanessa he planned to dump her on the street once he had drained her accounts. By the time the recordings finished, half the jury couldn't even look at Derek. And then it was Maya's turn. The prosecution calls Maya Thompson. Maya stood. Her legs felt steady. Her heart was pounding,
but her face was calm. She walked to the witness stand, took the oath, and sat down.
Miss Thompson, DHN began gently, can you tell the jury about your life before you met the defendant?
I don't remember most of it, Maya said honestly. I suffered a traumatic brain injury 6 years ago that caused severe amnesia. But I've recovered some memories since then. I remember my mother. Her name was Grace. She was a surgeon. She died when I was 19. I remember law school. I remember wanting to help people who couldn't help themselves.
And what's the first thing you remember after the accident? Waking up in a hospital bed. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know who I was. And there was a man sitting next to me, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. That man was Derek Holloway? Yes. What did he tell you about yourself? Maya took a breath. He told me my name was Sarah Miller. He said I was an orphan with no family. He said I had been in an accident, but that he would take care of me. He said I was lucky he had found me. Did you believe him? I had no reason not to. I couldn't remember anything. He was the only person I knew. I trusted him completely. And what was your life like after you married him? Maya's hands gripped the arms of her chair. At first, it seemed normal. He was attentive, caring. But slowly, things changed. He became controlling. He took my phone. He said I didn't need one. He would handle any calls for me. He forbade me from driving. He said I was too confused to be safe behind the wheel. He monitored my conversations with anyone who came to the house. Did you question any of this? I tried, once. I asked why I couldn't have my own phone, and he... Maya paused. He grabbed my face, hard. He said I was being ungrateful. He said after everything he had done for me, the least I could do was trust him. I never asked again. Can you describe the emotional abuse you experienced? It was constant. Every day he found something to criticize. My cooking was terrible. My cleaning wasn't good enough. I was too stupid to understand his work. I was too clumsy to be seen in public. I was lucky he tolerated me. I should be grateful anyone wanted me at all. Did you believe what he said? Maya's voice dropped. Yes. He said it so often, so convincingly, that I believed every word. I thought I was worthless. I thought I was broken. I thought the best I could hope for in life was to stay out of his way and be grateful for whatever scraps of attention he threw me. And the physical abuse? He slapped me when I annoyed him, shoved me when I was in his way, grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises. Once, he threw a glass at my head because I interrupted him during a phone call. It missed, but I spent an hour picking glass out of the wall while he watched and told me I deserved it. Did you ever think about leaving? Where would I go? Maya's voice broke slightly. I had no money, no phone, no car, no friends, no family, or so I thought. I didn't even know my real name. He had made sure I was completely dependent on him. I couldn't leave because I couldn't imagine any life outside of what he had created for me. DHN nodded slowly. Let's talk about the night of the incident. Can you describe what happened? Maya closed her eyes briefly, then opened them and looked directly at the jury. Derek was hosting an investor dinner. Important people. I wasn't supposed to speak. He had made that clear. But one of the guests asked me a direct question, and I answered. Badly. I stumbled over my words. Derek was furious. What did he do? His mistress knocked over a wine glass. Derek blamed me. He grabbed me by my hair in front of everyone and dragged me toward the door. He called me worthless, stupid, an embarrassment. He said I was a parasite he'd been tolerating for too long. And then? He threw me out, into the storm. There was a hurricane warning that night. Rain coming down in sheets, thunder and lightning, and he shoved me through the door and onto the steps. I fell,
I was bleeding. And he stood there and told me to crawl back to whatever gutter he'd found me in.
What did you do?
I begged him to let me back inside. I had no money, no phone, no way to get help. It was the middle of the night, in a gated community miles from anywhere. I thought I was going to die. And then what happened? He slammed the door in my face. Maya's voice was steady now, but tears were streaming down her cheeks. I heard the lock click. I lay there on the ground for I don't know how long. The rain was so cold. I started to feel numb. I thought about just closing my eyes and letting it end. What stopped you? Lights.
I saw headlights coming through the storm, a convoy of vehicles. They stopped next to me. A man got out, an older man. He looked at my face and Maya's voice broke completely. He started crying. He said my name, my real name. He said he was my father. The courtroom was absolutely silent.
That man was William Thompson?
Yes.
And he took you home?
He saved my life. Maya wiped her eyes. In every possible way. He told me the truth about who I was. DHN paused to let the testimony sink in. Miss Thompson, what do you want from this trial?
Maya looked at the jury, then at Derek, then back at the jury.
I want justice. Not revenge. Justice. For 5 years, Derek Holloway stole my life. He stole my identity, my money, my self-worth. He made me believe I was nothing. He made me believe I deserved nothing. And when I became inconvenient, he threw me away like garbage. She pointed at Derek. That man is not a victim. He's not a misunderstood husband who made mistakes. He's a predator who found a wounded woman and spent 5 years feeding on her. And I want him to spend the rest of his life in prison, where he can never do this to anyone else. Derek suddenly lurched to his feet. That's a lie.
Mr. Holloway, sit down, Judge Morrison commanded.
She's lying. She loved me. She was happy with me. Her father has brainwashed her. Bailiff, I saved her, Derek screamed, pointing at Maya. I took her in when she had nothing. I gave her a home. I gave her a life. And this is how she repays me?
2 bailiffs moved toward him. Derek shoved his lawyer aside.
You would be dead without me, Maya. Dead in a hospital bed with no one who cared. Everything you have, I gave you.
You gave me nothing. Maya's voice cut through his shouting like a blade.
You took everything I had, my name, my family, my sense of self, and you gave me nothing but fear and pain. You're not a savior, Derek. You're a parasite, and your time feeding off me is over.
Derek lunged toward the witness stand. The bailiffs tackled him before he made it 3 steps. He fought against them, screaming obscenities. His mask of charm finally shattered completely.
Get him out of my courtroom, Judge Morrison ordered. Mr. Crawford, control your client, or he will be removed for the remainder of the trial. It took 4 bailiffs to drag Derek out of the room. His screams echoed down the hallway until a door slammed shut and silence returned. Judge Morrison turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you will disregard the defendant's outburst. We will take a 30-minute recess to allow everyone to compose themselves. She banged her gavel. In the recess room, William held Maya while she shook.
You did it, he said softly. You stood up to him. You told your truth. You were magnificent. He's insane, Maya whispered. He actually believes he saved me. He actually believes I should be grateful. That's how abusers think. They convince themselves they're the heroes of every story. But the jury saw who he really is. That outburst probably did more damage to his case than 100 witnesses. Is it over? Almost.
Crawford will cross-examine you tomorrow. But after what just happened, I don't think there's anything he can do to save Derek now. Maya pulled back and looked at her father. I want to be there when they convict him. I want to see his face when he realizes he's going to prison forever. You will be, I promise. The next day, Crawford attempted his cross-examination. He was gentler than expected. Derek's outburst had clearly changed his strategy. He tried to suggest that Maya's memories might be confused, that her father might have influenced her recollection. But Maya answered every question calmly and consistently. By the time she stepped down from the witness stand, even Crawford seemed to know the case was lost. Closing arguments came and went. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they filed back into the courtroom, Maya gripped her father's hand. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Morrison asked.
We have, Your Honor. The foreperson stood. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of identity theft, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of domestic abuse, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of kidnapping, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of bigamy, we find the defendant guilty. 6 counts. 6 guilty verdicts. Derek sat frozen at the defense table. Derek Allen Holloway, Judge Morrison said, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing will be held in 4 weeks. Until then, you will remain in custody without bail. Bailiffs, take him away. As they led Derek out, he turned and looked at Maya one last time. There was no anger in his eyes anymore. No defiance. Just the hollow stare of a man who had finally realized that his game was over. Maya met his gaze without flinching. Goodbye, Derek, she said quietly. He didn't respond. He just turned and let the bailiffs lead him away to the life he had earned. William put his arm around Maya's shoulders. It's done, he said. It's finally done. Maya shook her head slowly. No, she said, watching the door close behind Derek. It's just beginning. 4 weeks later, Maya stood in the same courtroom where Derek had been convicted, waiting for the final chapter to close. The room was packed again. Reporters, supporters, curious onlookers who had followed the case from the beginning. William sat in the front row, his hand resting on the empty seat beside him, as if saving it for someone who couldn't be there. Grace, Maya thought. He's saving it for Mom. The bailiffs brought Derek in. He looked like a ghost of the man who had thrown her into the storm. Prison had stripped away every trace of the confident con artist. His cheeks were hollow, his eyes empty, his movements slow and defeated. He didn't look at Maya. He couldn't seem to look at anyone. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Judge Morrison took her seat and opened a folder. She studied it for a long moment before looking up. Derek Allen Holloway, you have been found guilty of wire fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, domestic abuse, kidnapping, and bigamy. Before I pronounce sentence, do you have anything to say to this court?
Derek's lawyer nudged him. Derek stood slowly, gripping the table for support. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. I loved her. I know nobody believes that, but I did. In my own way. I took care of her when she had no one.
You exploited her,
Judge Morrison said flatly.
Continue.
Derek flinched. I made mistakes. I know that now. But I never meant to hurt her.
I saw an opportunity, and I took it. That's all I've ever done my whole life. Seen opportunities and taken them. I didn't know how to be anything else. He finally turned to look at Maya. I'm sorry, he said. For whatever that's worth. I'm sorry. Maya said nothing. She had no words left for him. No anger, no hatred, no forgiveness.
just emptiness where he used to be. Judge Morrison nodded. Is that all? Yes, Your Honor. Then I will proceed to sentencing. The judge folded her hands.
Mr. Holloway, in my 32 years on the bench, I have seen many criminals, murderers, rapists, drug dealers, but I have rarely seen anyone as coldly calculating as you. She leaned forward. You found a woman at her most vulnerable, confused, amnesiac, alone, and instead of helping her, you saw a payday. You spent 5 years systematically destroying her sense of self while draining her finances. You isolated her from anyone who might have helped her. You convinced her she was worthless, so she would never question your control. And when she became inconvenient, you threw her out to die. Derek's head dropped. Your own recordings prove that you never loved Maya Thompson. You never even liked her. She was, in your own words, a brain-dead cash cow that you planned to dump on the street once you had taken everything she had. Judge Morrison's voice hardened.
The prosecution has requested the maximum sentence on all counts to be served consecutively. The defense has argued for leniency, citing your lack of prior criminal record. But Mr. Holloway, your lack of prior record simply means you were never caught before. It does not mean you deserve mercy. She picked up her gavel. On the count of wire fraud, I sentence you to 15 years. On the count of identity theft, I sentence you to 10 years. On the count of embezzlement, I sentence you to 12 years. On the count of domestic abuse, I sentence you to 5 years. On the count of kidnapping, I sentence you to 15 years. On the count of bigamy, I sentence you to 3 years. She paused. These sentences will be served consecutively for a total of 60 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. A gasp rippled through the courtroom. 60 years? Derek's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, that's effectively a life sentence. That is exactly what it is, Judge Morrison interrupted. Mr. Holloway stole 5 years of Maya Thompson's life. He stole her identity, her money, her sense of self. He deserves to spend the rest of his life paying for what he took. She banged her gavel. Court is adjourned. Bailiffs, remove the defendant. As they led Derek away, he turned one last time. His eyes found Maya's across the crowded room. Please, he whispered. Maya, please, don't let them do this. I'll give everything back. I'll do anything you want. Just please. Goodbye, Derek, Maya said quietly. The bailiffs pulled him through the door. His pleas echoed down the hallway until they faded into silence. It was over. William was at her side instantly, his arms wrapping around her. You did it, he said, his voice thick with emotion. It's finished. He can never hurt you again. Maya leaned into her father's embrace. She felt lighter somehow, as if a weight she had been carrying for 5 years had finally been lifted from her shoulders. Let's go home, she said. The crowd parted as they walked out of the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. But Maya didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't look back. She had said everything she needed to say. Now, it was time to start living. The months that followed were a time of healing and rebuilding. Maya threw herself into creating the foundation she had envisioned. She named it Grace's Light, after her mother, and dedicated it to helping survivors of domestic abuse find legal aid, counseling, and safe housing. The work was consuming but fulfilling. Every woman she helped felt like a small victory against the darkness Derek had created. You're working too hard, William said one evening, finding her still at her desk at midnight. You need to rest. I'll rest when the foundation is fully operational. Maya. William sat down across from her. I know what you're doing. You're trying to save everyone because you couldn't save yourself. But you did save yourself. You survived. You fought back. You won. I didn't save myself. You saved me.
I found you. There's a difference. William reached across and took her hand. You were the one who stood up in that courtroom. You were the one who faced Derek and told the truth. You were the one who refused to be a victim. I just gave you the opportunity. You did everything else.
Maya looked down at their joined hands.
I keep waiting to feel different, she admitted. I keep waiting for some moment where I suddenly feel whole again. But it hasn't come. I still have nightmares. I still flinch sometimes when someone moves too fast. I still catch myself thinking that I'm not good enough, not smart enough, not worthy of any of this.
That's trauma, William said gently. It doesn't disappear overnight. It doesn't disappear because a judge bangs a gavel. It takes time.
It takes work. It takes patience with yourself.
I'm not very patient. I know. You get that from your mother. William smiled sadly. She was always in a hurry, always trying to save the world before breakfast. I used to tell her to slow down, to take care of herself, but she never listened. She said there was too much work to do. And then she got sick. Yes, and then she got sick, and all that work she was saving for later, she never got to do it. William squeezed Maya's hand.
Don't make her mistake, Maya. Don't sacrifice yourself for the mission. You can help people and still take care of yourself. You can change the world and still rest sometimes.
Maya nodded slowly.
I'll try.
That's all I ask. The memories continued to return in fragments. Some came in dreams, vivid flashes of childhood moments, conversations with her mother, the feeling of being truly happy and safe. Others came during waking hours, triggered by a smell, or a sound, or a familiar face.
Mrs. Patterson became her memory guide, filling in gaps with stories and photographs.
This was your 5th birthday, Mrs. Patterson said one afternoon, showing Maya an album. You insisted on having a princess cake, but not just any princess. You wanted a lawyer princess. So your mama found someone to make a cake with a princess holding a tiny briefcase.
Maya laughed.
A lawyer princess? You said you were going to grow up to be a princess who helped people. Your mama cried for an hour.
Happy tears. Maya touched the photograph. A little girl in a purple dress, grinning at the camera, frosting on her nose. She looked so innocent, so unbroken.
I don't remember this specifically, Maya said, but I remember the feeling, being that happy, knowing I was loved.
You were the most loved child I ever saw, Mrs. Patterson said. Your parents would have moved mountains for you. And your mama? She wiped her eyes. When she got sick, the last thing she said to your daddy was, "Take care of our girl." It broke him when you disappeared. He thought he'd failed her. He didn't fail anyone. He never stopped looking for me. I know, but grief doesn't listen to logic. Mrs. Patterson closed the album. He's different now, you know, since you came back. I see the man he used to be. The man who laughed and lived and believed in good things. You gave him that back, Miss Maya. He gave me back, too. That's what family does. They give each other back. 1 year after Derek's sentencing, Grace's Light celebrated its official launch with a gala at the Thompson estate. The mansion was transformed. Lights strung through the gardens, music floating through open windows. Hundreds of guests, philanthropists, politicians, survivors, advocates, gathered to support the foundation's mission. Maya stood at the entrance, greeting guests as they arrived. She wore a gown of deep gold, her mother's favorite color, and the Thompson family locket that had been recovered from the pawn shop where Derek had sold it. You look beautiful, William said, appearing at her side. I feel terrified. Good. That means you care. He offered his arm. Ready to address the masses? No, but I'll do it anyway. They walked together into the ballroom, where a podium had been set up at the far end. The crowd parted as Maya made her way forward, applause following her steps. She reached the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "1 year ago, I was a different person. I was a woman who believed she was worthless. A woman who had been convinced that she deserved nothing better than abuse and isolation. A woman who had lost everything: her name, her family, her sense of self." She paused. "1 year ago, the man I thought was my husband threw me out into a hurricane and told me to die. And for a moment, just a moment, I considered it. I lay in that rain and thought about closing my eyes and never opening them again." The room was absolutely silent. But I didn't. I survived. Not because I was strong. I wasn't strong then. I survived because someone found me. Because my father, who had been searching for me for 5 years, happened to be driving down that road at that exact moment. Because sometimes the universe decides to give us a second chance. Maya looked at William, who was wiping tears from his eyes. "I named this foundation after my mother, Grace Thompson. She was a surgeon who spent her life saving children who everyone else had given up on. She believed that every person deserved a chance, that no one was beyond help. That love was stronger than circumstance." Maya straightened her shoulders. "Tonight, I want to talk to the women out there who are living the life I lived. The women who are isolated and controlled. The women who have been told they're worthless so many times they've started to believe it. The women who think they have no options, no way out, no hope." Her voice rose. "You have options. You have worth. You have hope. It may not feel like it right now. God knows it didn't feel like it when I was crawling through that storm. But it's true. There are people who want to help you. There are organizations that can protect you. There are laws that can save you. And now there's Grace's light." She gestured around the room. "This foundation exists because I survived. Because I was given a second chance, and I refused to waste it. Every dollar raised tonight will go directly to helping women escape abusive situations. Legal aid, counseling, safe housing, job training. Everything a woman needs to rebuild her life after someone has tried to destroy it." Maya leaned into the microphone. "Derek Holloway thought he could erase me. He thought 5 years of psychological torture would destroy who I was. But I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure other women know that they can survive too." She raised her glass. "To the survivors. To the fighters. To the women who refuse to be erased. And to my mother, Grace, whose light will never go out." The room erupted in applause. Maya stepped down from the podium and walked straight into her father's arms. "Your mother would be so proud," William whispered. "I know. I feel her here tonight." "She is here. She's always been here." As the gala continued around them, Maya allowed herself a moment of peace. For the first time since she could remember, since before the accident, before Derek, before any of it, she felt whole. Not healed, healing. Not fixed, becoming. Not the woman she had been before, something new, something stronger. The evening wound down slowly. Guests departed with promises of donations and support. The staff began cleaning up. William excused himself to thank the caterers, leaving Maya alone in the garden. She walked to her mother's rose bushes, the ones she had finally remembered helping to plant as a child, and sat on the bench beside them. The moon was full. The air smelled of flowers and possibility. "I wish you could see this, Mom," Maya said softly to the empty air. "I wish you could see who I'm becoming." A breeze rustled through the roses. For a moment, just a moment, Maya could have sworn she smelled vanilla and roses. Her mother's perfume. "I know you're here," Maya continued. "I know you never left,
And I promise you, I promise, I will spend the rest of my life honoring your memory, helping people, fighting for the ones who can't fight for themselves, being the lawyer princess you always knew I could be. She touched the locket around her neck. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. Thank you for being my mother. The breeze faded. The moment passed. But Maya felt something settle inside her, a peace she hadn't known she was looking for. She stood and walked back toward the house, where her father was waiting on the porch. "Everything okay?" William asked. "Everything is perfect." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the last of the cleanup crews pack their vans. "What's next?" William asked. "Tomorrow, I have meetings with 3 law firms about pro bono partnerships. Next week, we're opening our first safe house in Brooklyn.
Next month, I'm testifying before Congress about domestic abuse legislation." "I meant tonight." Maya laughed. "Tonight? Tonight I'm going to play my mother's piano. Then I'm going to sleep without nightmares. Then I'm going to wake up tomorrow and keep building the life I was always meant to have." William put his arm around her shoulders. "That sounds like a good plan." "It's the only plan that matters." They walked inside together, father and daughter, survivor and supporter, 2 people who had found each other again against all odds. In a prison cell 300 miles away, Derek Holloway sat alone in the dark, facing 60 years of consequences for the crimes he had committed. In a mansion filled with light, Maya Thompson sat at her mother's piano and played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the same piece she had played for her mother every year on her birthday. 2 lives, 2 paths, 2 very different endings. Derek had seen a vulnerable woman and chosen to exploit her. He had spent 5 years breaking her down, stealing from her, convincing her she was worthless. And now he would spend the rest of his life paying for that choice. Maya had been broken, but she had refused to stay broken. She had survived. She had fought back. She had reclaimed her identity, her family, her sense of self. And now she was using her second chance to help others find their own way out of the darkness. The music swelled and faded, filling the empty rooms with beauty. When the last note died away, Maya sat in silence for a long moment. Then she smiled. She was home. She was whole. She was free. And she was just getting started. 6 months later, Maya stood before a packed auditorium at Harvard Law School, her alma mater, though she had only recently recovered the memories of attending. "They asked me to speak about resilience," she said to the sea of eager law students. "About overcoming adversity, about finding strength in your darkest moments." She gripped the podium. "But I'm not going to tell you that strength comes easy. I'm not going to pretend that I fought my way back through sheer willpower. The truth is messier than that. The truth is that I was saved by chance, by my father driving down the right road at the right time. The truth is that healing isn't linear. The truth is that even now, years later, I still have days when I hear Derek's voice in my head telling me I'm worthless." She looked out at the students. "What I can tell you is this: you will face darkness in your career. You will represent clients who have been through hell. You will hear stories that break your heart and make you question everything. And in those moments, you will have a choice. You can look away. You can tell yourself it's not your problem. You can protect your own peace by ignoring someone else's pain." Maya's voice hardened. "Or you can fight. You can use your education, your privilege, your skills to make sure that the Dereks of this world face consequences. You can be the advocate that someone desperately needs. You can be the reason a woman like me gets a second chance." She straightened. "That's why I became a lawyer. That's why I started Grace's Light. That's why I'm standing here today. Not because I'm special, not because I'm strong, but because I survived. And survival comes with a responsibility. She stepped back from the podium. Be the help that someone is praying for. Be the voice that someone has lost. Be the light in someone's darkness. She smiled. Thank you. The applause was deafening. That night, Maya returned to Thompson Manor to find a letter waiting on her desk. No return address, just her name in careful handwriting. She opened it. The letter was from a woman named Sarah, a woman who had watched Maya's testimony during the trial, who had recognized her own story in Maya's words, who had finally found the courage to leave her abusive husband because of what Maya had said. You saved my life, the letter read. I don't know if you'll ever see this, but I needed you to know. I was ready to give up. I thought there was no way out. And then I saw you on television, standing tall, telling your truth, refusing to be silenced. And I thought, if she can do it, maybe I can too. Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she carefully folded it and added it to the growing collection in her desk drawer. Hundreds of letters from women all over the country who had found hope in her story. William found her there an hour later, still staring at the drawer. Good letters? He asked. The best kind. Maya closed the drawer. Every one of them is a reason to keep going. Then keep going. William kissed her forehead. Your mother would be proud. I'm proud. And somewhere out there, a woman who is ready to give up is sleeping safe tonight because of you. Maya nodded. That's enough, she said quietly. That's more than enough. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the garden where her mother's roses were blooming in the moonlight. She had been broken. She had been thrown away. She had been told she was worthless, forgotten, nothing. But she had survived. And now, every day, she was proving that the woman Derek tried to destroy was stronger than any storm he could throw at her. Maya Thompson had been lost in the darkness for 5 years. Now she was the light that guided others home. And that light would never go out.